As should be clear enough by now, the central concern animating the de-risking impulse is demand risk. That is, the risk that demand for the services associated with a particular physical asset does not meet expectations, and that, as a result, ownership of that asset does not generate the expected level of revenue. In turn, the central mechanism whereby the reconfiguration of real assets to meet investor requirements addresses such demand risk is the incorporation of some kind of revenue guarantee. Our primary examples thus far have been in the US water sector, namely the minimum annual revenue that Bayonne pledged to KKR and the fixed volumes and unit prices that San Diego pledged to Stone Peak Brookfield. But the phenomenon is, in fact, increasingly generalized across the various sectors and territories in which real asset managers invest. The UK's private finance initiative, PFI, for example, has become notorious for the cast-iron revenue guarantees that it grants to asset managers, thus mitigating all demand risk. As we heard in Chapter 1, PFI projects are structured in such a way as to trigger guaranteed annual unitary payments to the private owner of the PFI contract over the course of the contract life. These payments are made irrespective of the level and nature of actual usage of whatever the physical asset is that the government has procured through the contract, for instance, a school, a road, or a hospital. From a different part of the world, consider a particularly striking institutional exemplar, the Macquarie Career Infrastructure Fund, which the Australian asset manager Macquarie established in 2002 to invest in Korean infrastructural assets. By 2010, the fund had made 14 concession-based investments, 13 of which, 12 toll roads and a subway line in Seoul, were operational, and one of which, port facilities in Busan, remained in construction. Of these 14, all but one, the port, was supported by a minimum revenue guarantee from the Korean state, with a threshold, that is, the percentage of projected annual concession revenue protected by the guarantee, typically being in the 80 to 90% range. Nor, it should be noted, are such revenue protections available only on infrastructure investments. They are increasingly a feature of state-sponsored, private sector housing investment too, not least in the growing build-to-rent (BTR) market, into which asset managers have recently swarmed like bees to the proverbial honeypot. In 2017, for instance, the Scottish Government launched a rental income guarantee scheme to boost new construction of private rented housing, guaranteeing 50% of any gap between actual and projected rental incomes in order to provide greater certainty of rental income to investors and landlords. One asset manager to have responded to the government's initiative is Edmund de Rothschild Real Estate Investment Management, which in 2021 used its Residential Investment Fund UK to finance the development of 114 BTR apartments in Glasgow. Meanwhile, south of the border, the UK government has made available to BTR investors, including asset managers, valuable inverse forms of revenue guarantee by diluting any requirements, such as to provide affordable housing, that might impinge upon an investor's ability to maximise income.